So leadership communications can refer to any type of communication that might be beyond the scope of what you do in your everyday work life, maybe your own personal research, but communicating broader messages to other groups of people. So, for example, it could be giving testimony to city council about some issue. It could be speaking to the legislature. It could be representing your department as a whole, maybe at the university or off campus. It could be representing the university in different places. It could be working with your professional society and advocating for some issue or even policy with another entity. There are many skills for leadership communication that are basic for all types of communication. So any workshop would start with explaining the basics and making sure that we're all starting at the same place. And it may seem very simple, but things such as how to shake hands, how to look someone in the eye, how to approach them, how to greet them, and meet them if you're standing in a room together. These simple things, many people don't have practice with. And so any good workshop, I think, would start with these basics. Some of the other skills that leadership communications require, I think, is a reminder to be non-confrontational in approach to people. You may be talking about a confrontational topic or a very a topic that not everybody agrees with, and you may be there to try and convince people in your direction, but that doesn't mean you have to be adversarial in your approach. You do have to know your audience. It's very important that you do your homework as much as you can to know who you're going to be talking with, individuals or the mood of the room. Is it a big group of people? Are you going to have options to talk one-on-one? All of those questions play into how you're going to prepare yourself for a leadership communication. You can't just know the material and go in cold. There's lots of other things that you have to do that we may not be used to as an academic, where you mostly are presenting to friendly audiences in a seminar or a classroom or your own research group. So one unique aspect of leadership communications, I think, is being able to advocate for a message that didn't originate necessarily with you. It could be someone else's message. It could be the message of a group. And it therefore is a message that you might not be completely comfortable with the background and how to present it and what the pros and cons are of it. Certainly someone in their own field knows the background better than anyone else, and so they're able to address questions and promote their work. But when you're talking about leadership communications, you may be presenting something that you only recently have come to know about, and you very well may not know the history. And that requires then that you do a lot more homework to prepare yourself for the communications. So it may not be intuitive to people that when they are in a leadership communication setting where they're presenting an issue or an idea that may not be of their own generation, that the audience is different. And you may have a mixed audience. So you may have people who, they're not there just to listen to you. They may be there in a skeptical way. They may be there actually in an anti-idea way, that you have to go in being prepared for an audience that may have varying backgrounds, but also of varying friendliness to you. And therefore you have to prepare differently than you would than going into a class, for instance, or giving a seminar on your work. Well, it can be important when dealing with scientists to get them to accept that nonverbal communication is even important in dealing with people. Because many scientists would like the world to be completely logical, and that all communication should be logical and content dependent. And studies show that that is just not the case, unfortunately. Nonverbal communication is a larger factor in people's understanding than is the verbal communication. So I don't tailor coaching very much to someone's demographics, their age, their gender, their race. We ideally would like to think that none of that is important to the message we deliver, but in fact it is. It's all part of the nonverbal communication. So what I strive for is to help someone be comfortable with who they are. We're not going to change who they are. And everybody just needs to be, have a neat appearance, and their demeanor needs to be, calm. And so unless they have any peculiarities, habits that can be changed, which we might identify when we're in a workshop, there's not much that we can do about someone's demographics. But we have to recognize that how that's perceived by others may be have some variation. So let's take gender, for instance. I can't change my gender, but how someone perceives me may be different from one person to another. So I have to be aware that I might be talking to someone who thinks, oh, women are more nurturing and therefore more trustworthy, while someone else I may talk to may say, a woman talking about science, why should I listen to that? So you have to be prepared to read the nonverbal communications of the people you're talking to also in order to adapt what you say. And one of the benefits of working in a workshop is you not only get some personal coaching, but you also get some group coaching. And the group dynamics are often helpful because other people will notice things that maybe I didn't, or you can get a read of how you come across to a group, which may be quite different than how you come across to an individual. So you have to be able to set your ego aside when you come to a workshop like this, and learn what you do well and where you could make some improvements. I believe all teachers, whether science or otherwise, learn something about communications that is going to be valuable in a leadership communication workshop also. And that is how to take complex topics and simplify them for consumption in a way that is non-patronizing. So not talking down to people, but helping them construct their own knowledge. And what we know from science education literature is that everybody does have to construct their own knowledge. You can't just tell someone something and expect them to understand it. They have to build that knowledge themselves, and you have to give them the components to do that and the time to understand it. But one big difference is that you have time at your disposal in a classroom. You can plan your time, and you can plan the hierarchy of the information that you're presenting. You don't always have that luxury in leadership communication. You sometimes have people who aren't paying attention. They're not there of their own will occasionally, and they maybe want you to skip some of that background material, just get to the point, and you don't always have the same amount of time to work with them. When working with policymakers, whether that's in Washington or Sacramento, or even in the city, or talking with your local representatives or national representatives, it's I think important to find a way to make a connection with them that is separate from what you're talking to them about. And that can be relatively easy if it is someone who is representing a geographical area and you live in that geographical area. That's the kind of connection. Or if you know someone that they know, or if you've ever met them before. that kind of connection, I think, can be important to establish. It shows that you've done, again, your homework about the person. So sometimes the way to do that, if you've never met them before and you really don't have a connection, is to have looked at what they've done recently. Let's take a lawmaker in Washington, maybe someone in the House of Representatives. What committees are they on? What work is most important to them? Have you looked at that? When were they last at home in a rally, and what did they talk about? I mean, there's lots of things that you need to prepare for in order to talk with someone. You're taking their time, and you need to recognize how valuable it is. That can be very difficult, I think, for people in academia, because we have the luxury of our time being ours, and actually feeling that our work is the center of our own universe. It is what we have been hired to do and what we gain our fame for doing. But when you're in a leadership communication setting, you're often working with people who, while they are respectful of you and what you have done, they are the top dog in the immediate meeting, whether it's a group of people or an individual, and you have to downplay your particular role in this case and pay attention to how much time they have and what they're doing and why you are there, and make your message succinct. Learning to be better at leadership communications can certainly influence other aspects of your life. It may be for some people the first time that they've had to think outside of the narrow field of their research in presenting to a more varied audience, and maybe to inform or defend something to a broader group of people, or in an area that isn't normally of their comfort level. So, for instance, if I'll take the example of myself and being on the board of the American Chemical Society and having to talk about all things having to do with chemistry, when I am in particular an academic chemist and we are representing industrial chemists, we are representing government chemists, the chemical industry, although I've worked in the chemical industry, it's not my field of expertise. So being careful about how I represent it and how detailed I am without doing a considerable amount of homework is something that I'm always thinking about. So that actually then affects how I do normal communication on a daily basis. Because once you train yourself to be careful about something, you're careful about it all the time. So I find that my communication, even in my own area of expertise, has changed based on how I've had to learn to deal with the more global public. Well, what I hope people would learn is to develop a comfort level in talking about or presenting issues outside their own area, and learn how important it is to do the proper homework. So I think preparation will be an important part of what we talk about in the workshop. And that preparation would have to prepare you to talk about, for instance, give an elevator speech, which is very short. Maybe give a 5-minute talk on something, or be able to engage in a much longer discussion of something, all on the same topic, to be prepared to handle all those areas, because you don't know what you might be up against when you are being a leader and having to be on the spot communicating about something. So everybody, I think, can prepare for an isolated incident if you know exactly what it's going to be like. But that's not always the case. So that level of preparation, I hope, is what people will come away with from this workshop. And a level of comfort in saying, well, with the right help, yes, I can represent my discipline, or I can represent a broader area of people than I have in the past.